Alright, we're going to keep pushing forward with our local adjustment tools. This next tool is really useful if you're editing things like people's faces, different than the rest of the photograph. And so I have this picture of the sweetest dog in the whole world, Shiloh, and I would think that in this picture, I think it looks pretty good. I've done all my global edits on it. The only problem I have with it is her face is a little bit dark. So, and that makes sense. As I metered this photo before I took it, my light meter was taking into account all the light coming in my front window as well. So it makes sense that her face ended up pretty dark. So I'm going to show you how to use the radial filter, which can be used for specifically round things, or I'm sure 90% of the time, people's faces. So the radial filter is up here, right next to the adjustment brush. It's this circle right here. I'm going to select it. And you have a crosshair. I'm going to bring the crosshair and click and drag it over Shiloh's face. Now, I have no idea why this is the case with this tool, but the way that the radial filter works, so remember, whatever is red is what we're editing. So when you use the radial filter, by default, you're editing everything except for Shiloh's face, which I think is so weird because it's so different than the other tools that we've used in the local edits. So not a big deal. You just have to select her face and then go down here and hit invert mask. So now what's happening, if I hit show select mask overlay, is we're adjusting just her face and not the whole photo. Where before, by default, you're adjusting everything except for her face. I don't know why the programmers of Lightroom did that way, but they did. So not a big deal. So I'm going to just extend it a little bit larger, and I'm going to feather it maybe, nope, not that way, this way. Feather it to make sure that I'm getting her whole face and not bleeding off into the background too much. So you can adjust this by kind of squeezing everything together to fit the face that you're editing. I think that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to unclick show select mask overlay, and I am going to, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't invert the mask again. Darn it. Let's do that. Let me actually readjust this based on that. Okay, yep, her face looks good. All right, so now I am going to increase the exposure. That looks kind of good to me. It's looking a little washed out, so I might want to add contrast. I might want to add a little bit of the shadow. I might want to brighten up those highlights a little bit, brighten up the whites a little bit, maybe bring the blacks down a little bit. All right, and maybe bump up the clarity a little bit. Once I'm there, I'm going to hit done. So I'm going to do before and after here. So that's before, look how dark her face is, and this is after. It really brings out her face there. So let me show you one more thing with this. Let me go to a different picture. Here's another picture of Shiloh. We're going to do the same thing with her face. So I'm going to grab the radial tool, and I am going to click and drag, and then I'm going to move it over the top of her face, hit show selected mask overlay. Remember, what's red is what you're editing, what isn't is what you're not editing, so we want to invert this mask by going invert mask. I'm going to decrease the feather, and I'm maybe going to adjust the borders of this a little bit. So just like with the the graduated filter, I'm sure that we could probably use the brush as well to go in here and remove part of this mask too by doing something like that, so we can really tailor it just to her face. And if you wanted to add, I'm sure we can do that too by just clicking and adding like that. So I think that's really useful to be able to use these tools with the brushes. So I'm going to turn off the mask overlay, hit the O button. I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit. What if I took the saturation and made it black and white? You could make just a part of your photo black and white that way. So let me actually just increase the contrast, or the saturation. Maybe increase the clarity, just to make her face really pop. Okay. Bring out the whites. This is also a really good tool for adjusting highlights of people's eyes. So I think that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to hit done. Let's look before after. This photo has changed a ton. That's how it was captured, which is pretty bad. And it ended up being a pretty good photo if you just do those little adjustments on it. So the other thing that I wanted to show you about the radial filter is if we select it and we hit Shift and click, nope, Control click, we can say duplicate. And then we can click and drag this. So if you had multiple faces in a photo, you could just keep doing it. So if you had a picture of 4 people and you wanted to edit all of their faces the same, you could just edit one of the faces and then hit Control, duplicate, and then you can drag this over to another one. So let me see if I have a photo with multiple faces in it. This is like kind of sad. I'm just editing photos of my dog over here, you guys. Let's see. I swear I know people, okay? My photos appear that I do not know people. Okay, you get the point though. You can copy and paste those edits so that you can take the radial filter and apply it to multiple different faces. Okay, now don't make fun of me because I don't have friends. So that's the radial filter. I think that it is a really useful tool, and so is the graduated filter, but I tend, like I said before, I tend to always just go with the brush and just brush her face out, but, you know, it's kind of a cool tool. So let's actually use it one more time to darken everything except for her face. So I lightened her face, but now I just kind of want to create a silhouette. Or I'm sorry, not a silhouette, a vignette. That's the word. So I'm going to go New. And I'm going to draw a circle around. I'm going to hit Selected Mask Overlay. The keyboard shortcut is O. And I'm going to drag this over. And remember, everything that's red is what we're editing, not what is not red. Let's go there. Let's go there. And we could actually probably make this a really dramatic photo by really making the rest of the photo dark. So let's take the exposure really dark there. Let's feather the mask. I always get lost which way we're feathering here. That looks good to me. But let's really make it dark so that it's just kind of like her head hanging out in the abyss. Whoa, not that much. Okay. Exposure. In contrast. Let's turn the clipping mask off because we kind of want it to be so dark that we are clipping the photo. So right there, I think that looks great. I'm going to hit done. Now look how dramatic that photo is. And we just did it by using the radial filter. We did one radial filter to brighten her face and one radial filter to darken the background. And if I want to see those filters, I can just float over the top. Okay, that was the one for her face. And that was the one for the background. And let's look at before and after. So this is after, this is before. Look how much this photo has changed. And that's like a really super easy local edit. I hope that was really useful for you guys, and I think this is a really great way to edit people's faces. Okay, I hope that was useful.